Hello, everybody. So, today I'm going to talk about ignorance. I was having this conversation with somebody in the comments, and he had a really good question that was, he said that Advaita Vedanta can't solve. And the idea is that, so Brahman is unchanging, doesn't have any parts, etc. And so how can it create the illusion that we have here? What's the mechanism, he said, that it produces the illusion? And so I was, the thing that I find is the safest thing to do is stick to what Advaita Vedanta says, rather than trying to come up with my own ideas. And I like talking about my own ideas too, but so the idea is that nothing was created. This is, the hard line point of view that comes from the Mandukya Upanishad and Gaudapada. So nothing was created, nothing was born. It's all an illusion. And so the guy said, well, yeah, but how is it changed from this Brahman, the truth, into the illusion? What's that process? So I gave the classical example of a snake and a rope. So you're out in the rain at night, and you see something on the ground, and it's a snake, and it looks like it's going to attack you. You can almost see it's going to move and bite you. And then somebody points out that it's a rope, and suddenly the illusion disappears. You see, oh no, it's a rope. Now, the snake was not produced by the rope. Nothing about the rope made the snake. No part of the rope became the snake. It didn't turn into scales and become a snake. A snake didn't slither along and lie on top of the rope. It was just a mistake that we made. It was an error. It was ignorance, illusion. So there's no connection between the rope and the snake. The rope doesn't do anything. It's there still, and yet we see a snake that seems almost like it's moving to us because of our fear of being bitten at night. So this is what I said. I said, yeah, it's just ignorance. And he commented, he was very philosophically, he must have some background in philosophy. He was talking about ontology and things like this. So, and he said about ignorance never having a beginning. So there's this eternal ignorance. It seems like it's in parallel to Brahman. So we've got this eternal ignorance and we've got this eternal Brahman. So it's a duality. And I'd heard a story by Swami Sarvapriyananda where he'd gone to a conference somewhere, it was about ignorance, and they pointed out that ignorance doesn't have to have a beginning. So I don't speak German, and my ignorance of German, when did that begin? Well, I suppose when I was born. But then the question comes, okay, so could I speak German before I was born? Clearly not. So ignorance doesn't actually have to have a beginning. That's the argument he gave. And I like that argument. And you might be able to poke holes in it if you want, but that satisfies me. So the ignorance never had a beginning. And he continued saying about how there would be, how it could produce this, something about Brahman that would enable it to happen. But the thing is that it's just a mistake. It's an error. And so I went back and forth about this, and he commented a few more times, and I said, I think you're really thinking there is a real snake. And he gave a few other examples. He said the water and the waves. So the ocean does turn into a wave. It's got this separate form, but I pointed out that the water doesn't transform. It doesn't turn into H2O plus or anything different. It's still water, no matter whether it's a wave. And he gave another analogy of the mirror. And he said the mirror changed, but no, the mirror doesn't change. Maybe a computer screen changes. So you see a city in a mirror. The mirror hasn't actually changed. The mirror is completely independent from what's being projected in it. A computer screen, yes, would change. So maybe a computer screen is not such a good analogy. Of course, these are all analogies and they have their limits. If an analogy was exactly the same as the thing it's trying to describe, it would be the real thing. So they all have their limits. And so I said, yes, no, the water doesn't actually change. The snake is in no way made by the rope. There's no transformation. When you realize it's not the snake, it doesn't slither away, it doesn't transform. It was just pure ignorance. And then that morning, I just happened to be listening while I was making breakfast. I sometimes put on the Swami Sarvapriyananda's Ask Swami videos. And I was into that, just listening to, I was having my breakfast. And he started talking about this very thing. And he said, and I think it's quite useful. I told the guy, it didn't really satisfy him, but he said thank you, and we parted ways. So the thing that Swami Sarvapriyananda said was, if we could demonstrate how ignorance is produced by Brahman, how that happens, then we would be proving duality, because it would prove that the ignorance is real. The thing is, the ignorance is ignorance. And he said that there's a whole branch of Indian philosophy that goes into ignorance and how we can not know things. He said that the ignorance itself, because it's ignorance, there's no way that you can get out of it. Things can be wrong in infinite ways, and right in just one way. So trying to prove the ignorance, you don't need to try to prove the ignorance, you need to cut it down. And the fact that when we look into ignorance, the more we look into ignorance, the more paradoxes we get. This is actually good, because this proves the theory. Because as we cannot find how it's done, it shows, if we could find how it's done, then we would have duality. But the fact is that the ignorance is just ignorance, and the real is Brahman. And there's nothing about Brahman that changes or creates ignorance, and their ignorance can never be understood. So I don't know how satisfying that is for you, but yeah, the guy wasn't, he said he saw it, that it was a matter of faith. I don't know. It could be. The other alternative is you believe in Kashmir Shaivism and maybe the universe actually does change. But I get the impression from Swami Sarvapriyananda that Kashmir Shaivism is lots of mystical paths tied together, and it's very rich, very deep with many, many practices, but it's difficult to defend. He says that he can always defend Advaita Vedanta. There's enough, it's clear enough and simple enough to be able to defend against anything. And there's lots of literature, they argued with the Buddhists for 1,000 years over this. So that's the story then. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.